It's the People's Realtor, and today we're going to be chatting a little bit about what it really takes to call Hamilton, Ontario home. Because like any other city, Hamilton has its ups and downs, and there are definitely some things you'll want to avoid while searching for your new place. So I put together a list of 10 things you need to know before you decide to move here. And that said, Hamilton is a big city, and I'd go so far as to say that it has something to offer just about anyone. So, let's dive into the nitty-gritty and see whether this steel town is right for you. All right. So quickly, just taking a nice little overview of the city if you've never seen it. Here it is in all of its glory. We got Hamilton. And what most people think of when they think of Hamilton or what they picture is kind of what they see from the highway. And the highway kind of just cuts through right along the water. And people see the steel town, the smokestacks, the industry, and maybe that gives them an impression, that that's all it is. But that could not be farther from the truth, because here we got Hamilton downtown, Hamilton proper, but all this other greenery and all this good stuff all the way around here, that's all Hamilton too. It encompasses all these surrounding areas which were amalgamated into Hamilton in 2001. So it's quite a large city by landmass. It's actually, I said this in the last video too, but it's almost twice the size of Toronto in landmass. So there's lots to discover when you're thinking about Hamilton. It's not just maybe what you've heard, but like anything, there's pros and cons. So let's jump right in. Number one, let's talk a little bit about this Steel City identity that Hamilton carries, and for good reason, really. We have two major steel factories here, Fasco and Stelco, and historically, Hamilton was built kind of around, it boomed around these two steel industries, and from that, Hamilton grew into the kind of working class community. But these days, it's kind of shed a lot of its steel roots. Of course, it's still a major part of the city, but it's grown to be more than that. Like if we're looking at the map here, we can see all here is DeFasco and Stelco. And these two factories have provided, countless jobs to the community over the years for decades. And it's a great thing. But, if you're coming into Hamilton, you're going to see these steel factories, and maybe you're going to think, I don't want to live in a place where there's smokestacks down the street. And you could be absolutely right. I wouldn't want to do it either. I do not live in that section. It is kind of cheaper area to live. If you're on a budget, you can find pretty good deals down there, but you do got to keep in mind kind of your surroundings, where you're at. Lots of industry around there, lots of commercial, big trucks driving around. The roads can leave a lot to be desired just from the sheer amount of trucks and wear and tear they go through all the time. But saying that, looking at the map here, we can see it is really only this section here. And, if you are in the downtown core and stuff like that, you'll be able to kind of see, depending where you are, see these things. But there's way more Hamilton than there is just Steel Town, right? Because look at this. This is just the steel industry there, but we also have all these areas up here. And this line here, we've talked about it before, this is the escarpment, which essentially kind of splits the city in two. We call it the mountain, but it is not a mountain, not in the way you would picture one. It's just kind of a really big hill, if I'm going to be honest. And it cuts right through the city. So if you go up the mountain, you're going to feel like you're in a different place. Along with, Stoney Creek to the east over here, and you got Dundas and Ancaster in the west. And all this, countryside all down here, which I live Tweedside represent. But yeah, don't let someone tell you Hamilton is just, this smelly steel industry town, because it is a lot more to that. But I will say it is a little bit of a shame. We have all this beautiful waterfront that is kind of occupied by the steel town. But hey, we would not have a city if that wasn't there. But if you do like waterfront, you just shoot down to either Stoney Creek to the east, or you can hop over to Burlington in the west, and there's some beaches there you can lay out and stuff like that. Another thing though, growing up, we'd go to the beach, go to Hutch's on the beach, the fish and chips, not my thing. I get the foot-long hot dog, but you were never allowed to swim in the harbor in this kind of region right here, just because of the water contamination from the steel factories and stuff like that. So we never would, it was a thing. No one would swim in Lake Ontario. You'd have to drive a little bit. Maybe you go to Lake Erie or just down 50 Road and stuff like that. Another thing to be said, though, because we have that steel industry and stuff like that, our water treatment is world class. Tap water is great. there's always pros and cons, right? Number two, I want to talk about a little bit about just, the very diverse neighborhoods and communities in Hamilton, because it's vastly different depending where you are. If you're looking at Hamilton or if you're looking at listings, maybe two houses, they kind of look, similar, but they could be in two completely different areas. One you're going to want to avoid. One, is a good place to plant your seed. So avoid these neighborhoods. I'm going to tell you right now, not saying that they're, not trying to knock them too much, but I would say the majority of people probably would not want to live above Barton Street, because that is where you're going to find all this steel industry and stuff like that. And, there's some issues with crime and stuff like that. So if you're moving with your family, I would say try and stay south along under the, if you want to stay in the lower city, places like that are under the escarpment are really great. They're really nice homes. A lot of them are older. And I really especially love this area right here. It's called Rosedale. As you can see, it's kind of tucked away here. It's kind of got this own little pocket with a nice, beautiful golf course. King's Forest, that's a city course, really nice, speaking as a former member. Some other places you might want to consider would be Ancaster, a little bit pricier. That's kind of where all the richies came from. As I came from Stoney Creek, it's another suburb just to the east over here in this area. So these are great places if you have a family and you want to plant your seed somewhere. There's going to be some places you want to avoid, the industrial sector. And that's when you call me, Joey D, the People's Realtor. I'm going to set you up where exactly what you want. You tell me a few things and we're going to set you up real good. So we love helping people discover the great city of Hamilton. So our phone is always available for you. Call, text, whatever, email, whatever. So yeah, a lot of what people think is Hamilton is really just concentrated into this area. We got so much more than that. A lot of people will trash it and stuff like that, but there are, pros and cons to every city, right? Like another fun fact maybe you didn't know. Hamilton has over 130 waterfalls. It's the waterfall city of the world, more than any other city in the world. That's true fact. You can look that up. Number three, let's talk a little bit about traffic and roads and all that fun stuff. Because if you're hoping for a place where you can easily just hop on a subway, shoot around the city, it's not so much like that. It is a very car-centric place. Not saying you can't get around. I know there was someone in the comments on another video disagreeing, saying, you don't need a car to get around in Hamilton. And that's true. I don't mean to give off that impression. There's public transit, or public transit is pretty good. But it's not, it's not something I would say you can rely on to get into any part of the city, right? Because Hamilton is huge and it's a very sprawling city. We don't have a subway system. There is the LRT, light rail transit, that's been planned and canceled, and who knows, and a lot of controversy surrounding it. But yeah, being that it is kind of a car-centric city, you can get traffic. There's a lot of traffic, especially if you're going to be commuting to Toronto, you're going to be hitting a lot of traffic, depending on what time you leave. Rush hour can be pretty brutal. Just to ask my wife, she's got to go in, 1 or 2 days a week, and that can be 2-hour each way, right? Because we do live in this kind of eastern part over here. So for people in the east, their best bet to get to Toronto would be to drive their car to Burlington over here and take the GO train to Toronto. Obviously, that's not ideal. You're driving, you're getting on the train, and then you're going to Toronto, and then you're coming back, getting your car, sit in traffic at rush hour. So that is something to consider, and that's just traffic on the highway. Now, let's talk a little bit about Hamilton here. Traffic can be bad. The roads can be terrible. Barton Street East, this industrial sector here with all the trucks pounding it in, day out. Those roads get pretty bad. There's a couple other spots that are very, industrial areas. We got some of the worst streets in Ontario. But yes, again, it's kind of in one section. And then there's all this good stuff here. One thing I will say, Hamilton was kind of designed when it was, experiencing kind of the steel boom. They developed a lot, especially up the mountain, which is this section here. They kind of developed all this in the 70s and stuff, and they made it really grid-like and kind of easy if you're in a car to get around. But again, that stuff is really kind of sprawled out. So a lot of things you will have to get in your car and go to here, go to there. Not to say, again, commenter out there, I don't mean to say you can't use public transit to get places, but it's just not as convenient as I think it could be, or that it should be, really. Another thing is, we've talked about it a little bit, but this line here, the escarpment, it cuts through the city, right through, as you can see, west to east, and you have a few accesses to get up the mountain, and you can get up on the highway. The accesses themselves aren't too, busy. I've never seen them like really jammed. So, if you're down here and you got to shoot up, you do got to keep in mind where those accesses are, and just trying to get to them sometimes can be a little bit of a headache depending on the time of day. But another little pro, which I like, but a lot of people don't, these two streets right here, Main Street and King Street, they cut all the way down through Hamilton, east to west, right? They have the traffic lights kind of synced up. So if you hit a green light and you drive reasonably, you can kind of coast through the whole downtown and just kind of cut right through the city. A lot of people don't like this because they think, it encourages speeding, careless driving, which they definitely do got a point, because Hamilton does have a bit of a reputation for our bad driving, our dangerous driving, just because, do got a lot of characters on the road just trying to get to A and B, and not, it's their world. Right? Something to think about, right? Traffic can be bad, or roads can be bad, or public transit could be better. If, driving around a car isn't, a big problem for you. For most families, they do have a car to get the kiddos around. Hamilton is laid out pretty good for that. Next up, let's talk a little bit about our market, our housing prices, property taxes. This is another one. If you don't know, Hamilton serves as a commuter city for a lot of people that have to work in Toronto, and they got to make that commute. But maybe, Toronto is expensive. So they've come to Hamilton, they get more for their money, they get a nice yard, they get a nice house, but they do still have to make that commute. And if you're moving to Hamilton, yeah, you're going to find a cheaper home than Toronto, but it's going to be a lot more expensive than, you could have gotten pre-2015, 2014. And another really big thing to consider is our property taxes. And we got some of the highest property taxes in Ontario. In fact, it's about 1.4% higher than cities like Toronto. It can be contributed to a lot of things. Our steel town, which is not as steely as it once was. Lower property values, because homes here are cheaper than in the GTA. The city needs a higher rate to kind of raise that money. We got a smaller business tax base with fewer big commercial taxpayers. More of the load falls on homeowners. I would say a little bit can be contributed to maybe some decisions or non-decisions from our local leaders. But I know it's a big point of contention around here. People hate it. People don't like it. People want some relief, right? Stuff's being so expensive these days, but that's just reality. If you're going to move to Hamilton, you got to think about property taxes, home prices, and stuff like that. You might think you're finding the deal of the century, and then you're going to go to the house and you're going to see exactly where you are, and you're going to probably want to avoid it. Next up, let's talk about a little bit about our heritage home, our vintage homes with hidden costs a lot of the time, right? We do got some beautiful century homes in some beautiful areas like Westdale in the old city of Hamilton, and these homes can be big on big lots, tons of space, tons of character, and the streets are absolutely, beautiful with trees, nice and mature, and everyone kind of takes care of their stuff. But, if you're moving into one of these neighborhoods, you might not even be thinking, maybe the house looks okay, well maintained inside, but it's in between those walls, right, that you can't see. And a lot of the times the inspector, there's some things they'll miss. Obviously, some of the big ones like your electrical, right? If you have a century home, maybe buy it sight unseen and come to find out there's knob and tube wiring. Well, knob and tube wiring is going to cause you all sorts of problems. So if you are looking at these kind of older century homes, you love them. I know a lot of them are well maintained and fully upgraded, but there are those homes have to make sure either the wiring's up to date, plumbing's all good, the foundation is a big one. We'll say a lot of these older homes, foundations are very strong. But yeah, these are 100-plus-year-old homes we're talking about. And if it's not taken care of properly throughout the years, you're going to find a whole bunch of issues. Water, moisture in your basement, electrical, like I said. It's going to cause you problems with insurance and all this sorts of other stuff. And you may be on the hook for thousands of dollars after you complete the sale. So if you're looking at these neighborhoods and with these old century homes and it looks beautiful, I totally agree with you. They are beautiful. If I didn't live out in the country, live in the country lifestyle, I'd probably be living in a nice 2-story century home in the lower city. Get in there, you gotta look and see what's going on behind the panel, right? And that's something I do every time, right? I make sure everything's looking kosher, everything's looking good. And then obviously always recommend getting a inspection on homes that are that age, right? So you just call me, Joey D, the People's Realtor, and we're gonna set you up with exactly what you want. Next up, I don't think it's totally a bad thing, but maybe, you're not from here, you're not too sure, but I was, grew up in Hamilton, and we definitely do have this kind of strong local culture, the strong steel city, blue collar kind of identity, which may be off-putting to a lot of people. There are definitely some unique individuals in Hamilton, but for the most part, I think you're going to find that the people here are just wonderful people. But if you got your nose up a little bit and you don't want to be kind of in these neighborhoods, there's places you're going to want to avoid. Maybe don't live in the East End. Play of the Earth, those people. Let's talk a little bit about our weather, right? We got some cold winters and we got some hot summers, right? When I'm talking hot, not that nice dry heat that native Arizonians like, but I'm talking about that Florida, step outside your house, go to the beach, go in the pool. We've got some great pools in the city, some city pools. So our weather is not, the craziest weather in the world, but in winter it can be harsh, right? Luckily, we do got great snow removal service and stuff like that. But yeah, the winters can be harsh, especially if you're in the up on the mountain, the country and stuff like that. It can get very windy, very cold. And then in the summer, very, very hot, very sticky, right? Could be worse. Buffalo, is about an hour east of us, and their winters are much worse because if we look at the map here, see we got Hamilton, and then we got Buffalo right here. Buffalo is kind of in this real nook, and it just gets dumped on with snow all the time, right? I'm sure you've seen a Buffalo Bills game showcasing that. Go Bills. And so yeah, not a big deal, I don't think. But maybe something to keep in mind. Next up, talking a little bit about our environment, our air quality, our concerns about them. Yeah, you might come here and it's definitely got a musk in the air in some parts, the steel regions, I would say more than anything. But our air quality can be a little problematic, to say the least. Steel production remains a major employer within the city. So, those factories are running all the time, emitting all sorts of stuff. And if you're living kind of in that area, home values are going to be a lot cheaper, but air quality can take a hit there, and definitely not going to want that, right? If you're raising some kiddos there and all that good stuff. So while it can affect all of Hamilton, not going to lie to you, it's really just kind of centralized into that waterfront area, the smell at least, and up the mountain, it's really kind of like you're in a different city. Another one might be a biggie, but again, kind of centralized into one area is just kind of our community safety and, feeling safe. Many Hamiltonians do feel safe day to day, but there are concerns about, just kind of where we're headed. In a 2025 community safety survey, respondents flagged homelessness, road safety, open drug use, and violence as top issues. Like the homelessness problem, it's not isolated to Hamilton. I think every city is experiencing this in one way or another. Barrie just declared a state of emergency on the subject. So it's definitely something that everyone's kind of feeling, but in Hamilton, it can be a little bit jarring, driving across some of these encampments, especially with that contrast of the steel city and then the escarpment on one side, and then hate to see it, right? It's terrible, terrible things. We got to figure out how to solve this crisis. Let's be real. If you're moving in from out of town, you don't park your kid is going to be playing at growing up to be unsafe where people are living there. And, the People's Realtor, my heart goes out to them, but parks are for everyone. Although 94% felt safe going outside during the day, and over 76 believed it was safe for children to play outside, roughly 2/3 were worried about 50% were worried about vandalism, and about 55% feared home break-ins. And I do got to say, in the Southern Ontario, the carjackings and have been just kind of out of control. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't know someone who has their car stolen. Happened to a neighbor of mine, and I'm way out in the country. So happened to another friend of mine, and I'm sure you can find all sorts of stories of people kind of suffering the same thing. This is kind of a fairly new phenomenon. I don't know the data. I'm sure it's car thefts are way up, just the sheer amount you hear about them and, stuff like that. So yeah, safety and kind of stuff like that is a concern, and you're right to be concerned, especially if you're moving in with your family. There are areas where, you can kind of be far away from that stuff. Ancaster, Stoney Creek is these are great family neighborhoods. Up the mountain again, all this area. There are some rough spots on the mountain, but you just gotta call me, Joey D. I'm gonna tell you exactly where you want to be. All right, you can't do that unless you text this number at the bottom of the screen. Another little drawback I would say is just kind of it's a shame to see a lot of boarded up, closed businesses when you're driving around King Street, Main Street West. And a lot of these areas have been revitalized, but a lot of them also have just been stagnant with empty buildings and closed up storefronts. There are some areas where it's very lively, bustling. Lock Street, Ottawa Street's a good one too. That's kind of had a revitalization over the past 10 years. And King William Street's got some great spots on it too, some world-class restaurants. But there are some areas where you're driving around and it's just really, lacking a better word, a little bit depressing with the storefronts just vacant and stuff like that. And I remember, driving to grandma's house as a little kid. A city it was just kind of vacant buildings and stuff like that until you went to like a city where the community really kind of supports all these businesses and comes out and shows up for them. And you see these bustling streets of people walking around, shopping at all these different places. And so that was a little bit of an eye-opener for me. And I thought, Hamilton has so much potential to be any one of these places, but it has been growing. And a lot of these areas, which were once, kind of in disarray, have been revitalized and a lot of great work has been done. But there are some areas where, you can still see a lot of that, maybe some regions of the East End and North End, but still lots of great areas for you to explore, discover, plant your seed, make this great, beautiful city your home, because we could talk about the flaws of it all day. I still love this place. I think it's one of the best places to live in Canada, geographically and just overall. And I'll challenge anyone in the comments section to say otherwise, because I'm here to chat with you, the fine people of Southern Ontario and beyond. My name is Joey D. I am the People's Realtor, and I'm here to help you reach your real estate goals, your financial goals, your investment goals. So if you found this video helpful and you want to learn more, please subscribe, keep watching, stay tuned. And if you are thinking about a move, or you're just kicking around in your head and you want to know more, you call me and or you text me, email me, always available. We love helping people and we do it every day. So do not hesitate to give us a call, text, email. Once again, I am Joey D'Ambrosio. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.